You're listening to the Total Perspective Vortex. I'm Tragula.
And I'm Christian.
So today is June 19th, 2020. Stuff is happening. I think we're all sort of numb from uh, the lockdown and the riots, and uh, like now there's stuff on the Chinese Indian border. It's getting a little hard to keep track. So,
Right. Yeah, yeah, and like you said, I think people are getting numb. The sense I get when I go out in public is that this coronavirus. I think people are done with that. That's
well, there's an I have an anecdotal um, sort of landmark for me, and I don't know if this is going to be a new normal or if anyone else has experienced anything like this. But uh, yesterday, I went to Costco, and my wife uh, gave me a shopping list to to bring to Costco,
right.
and for the first time ever in my adult life, like I went to a store and I couldn't get half of the things on the list.
Just the items weren't there. It's
Yeah, the
just
items
it
weren't
had
in
been
the
stock.
store, right? So that was like, and this is like stuff we typically get at Costco. So it wasn't like any of these were tentative. Like I, this in the norm at any time. These are items I could get at Costco, and less than half of them were not in the store. So we're talking things like eggs were not available. Um,
Wow.
uh, yeah, a bunch of other stuff. This is why my wife gives me lists. I don't usually keep track of what I'm getting at the store. But yeah, and it was just like, you know, it was uh, it was noticeably empty. Like lots of things were like sort of on the not everything. There was still lots of stuff where there was lots of stuff, right? But there were
Right.
noticeable you could tell that they were obviously making efforts to make sure all the shelves were stacked, and there were
Stocked.
definitely still stocked, and there were still definitely things that were like running down on supply.
Wow.
And
So do you think our supply chains are
yeah,
being
well, I mean,
that
our supply
affected?
chains were have been affected earlier, but I think that it's finally really starting to hit. Because like, the other thing was, I noticed this too because I eat a lot of beef, but the the price of first during the lockdown, they shut down the beef industry. They shut down the meat processing plants, so we
Right.
had to import our that was like one way that they were killing um, Alberta, and how I feel like these things were targeted. Um, but I think they've reopened the meat plants, but now it's a double the price. A lot of the meat was like radically different. Stunk chunks of stewing beef was costing more than $30 for a
Right.
pack, and steaks were over $50. And no, and the prices had definitely inflated on a lot of goods. Not as it was definitely it was noticeable mostly on the beef, but yeah, everything. Well, not everything, but most things, especially sort of food or perishable items, you could see that they were significantly more expensive, more along the lines of like 10 to 20%, like someone threw a new tax on them, as opposed to like double the price. But still, that was
Right.
happening as well.
In terms of beef, I the prices have normalized where I shop, but the quality is like I wouldn't buy these steaks normally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the same as you. I eat a lot of beef, and what I found is that yeah, it's the quality is much lower. I've been doing the Donald Trump full uh, had it fully cooked kind of in the middle, but I cook them longer now because I just it looks more questionable. It's like
Yeah.
where normally at this price you'd have good steak. Now it's like I don't know. I'm cooking you. I'm cooking you. You scare me. So
And it's very interesting that this is completely off the media radar, is what I'm noticing.
Yes.
Right?
Everything. The economic impacts are not something that's discussed. Health is not discussed, like what you should do to prevent getting the coronavirus and what you can do for, to boost your immune system, that type of stuff, which you would think is critical.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, it's like we have saying
Well,
that
it's
in
not
China is
actions the
racist.
government, not actions the government takes. Right? Yeah, that would
Right.
be individual responsibility. Stay locked in your house, and we'll take care of it. Is
Right.
typically the
Right.
message.
But so but even the media could be talking to medical experts trying to figure this stuff out, and they don't do that. And then second is it's what you're saying. We don't get to see the economic impacts. You see it at the margins,
Yeah.
but
Oh, because it was a flip here. Remember how they in the United States they were all upset that you couldn't that Trump was giving these daily briefings, and his numbers were
right,
going up. So the media cut off his daily briefings.
right,
Yeah, and here in Canada, like it's the exact opposite. Like my YouTube feed is just all pictures of Trudeau and his cabinet ministers. Like I should call it the YouTube force feed, right? Because they have
the
like their
force feed.
suggestions, but they have this like bar now in the
Clever.
middle of it's like, this is what we believe you should be watching, right?
Right.
And it's all and Trudeau doing his daily briefings and like all this. Yeah, I don't know how to describe it other words. Well, they have Doug Ford, who's the premier too, but it's state propaganda is like really
Yeah. Yeah.
best way to describe it.
Just briefly on that note, kind of a shout out to the creators that are on BitChute. But I found now the force feed. I love that. That's fantastic. But what I found now is I'll go on YouTube and it gives me results that are so. Look, I don't want to listen to your food channels. To yummy yummies or whatever. I've said no to so many of them. You should have a general sense of what it is I listen to now, but not being fed all these things. What I do now is when it gets too force feedy, I go on BitChute and a lot of the creators are on there now, and I find that it's much more aligned with what it is that I'm interested in. So, and a lot of content creators, even though they don't have a ton of views, they are making that effort to be on there. So, shout out to them, and but it's something to check out now. It's becoming more and more useful, and
Yep.
more of your content that you love is on there. We should do that too.
Yeah, I've been trying, but I think well the thing is uploading there is getting a little difficult because they're growing beyond their means now. Like they are doing very well. They have what you call nice problems to have, but it can be
Right.
actually very painful to upload a video because just
Is that right?
their service is so overloaded from people trying to bail off of YouTube. So
Right.
yeah. So,
Right.
but it's a good because I'm still willing to go through the extra effort it's taking to upload and the extra time just because you're right, they're providing such a needed service now.
Right. Right. And yeah. So, what did we want to discuss today?
This is something that came up earlier in the week, uh, so it's not so much as much news now, but I think it's still illustrative of some things I want to talk about.
Welcome
And
to 2020.
this is
Something that happened 3 days ago isn't news. Yes.
well, even then it's sort of um like blue check mark on Twitter gives really hot takes.
Ooh,
It's not
yeah.
something that shouldn't be super newsy, but it's just so illustrative of so much that it's hard to pass up. So there's
Right.
this guy, this Palmer Report guy, and uh, yeah. So I'll let his words speak for themselves here. So what do we got here? We shouldn't be cold hearted about this, but having a conservative as a police officer, for instance, isn't much difference than having a KKK member as a police officer. It's just not something that a civil society can ever tolerate. We should rehabilitate any conservatives who are willing to try. We should pay for them to undergo therapy and retrain so they can understand the world around them. But first, we must get them out of the positions of influence because they're infringing on the rights of others.
Wow.
Wow. So um,
There's more to this, right?
there
There's
is there is more, but
a
I wanted
huge
to
thread.
we'll start with that because I
We'll
don't.
start with that. That's a lot to digest.
Yeah. Uh, but I think that like there's a couple of interesting things here. So first, like he's equating conservatives with the KKK right out of the
A
mark,
left,
and you'll see that, and
right.
it's
A left wing group, the KKK,
KK.
right? Yep.
Okay, yeah, okay, yeah. So you get the history there, but this is and with that left wing, right wing group, you're sort of framing it in ideology,
Sure.
and that's how you're trying to set up your tribes. That his tribe is being built along different lines. So uh, uh, I don't I don't always think like saying this is on the right or the left is that useful. Like making an ideological appeal to who's in your tribe and who's not isn't. And this is just with arguing, or if we're going to say arguing or saving leftists. I'm just sort of pointing out that's not how he's building his tribal lines, and that's why how they can. So he's just designating, and this is classic in group out group. Everyone in the out group is once you're othered, you're in the out group, you're just evil. So that's how they can equate conservatives and the KKK.
Yeah,
So you can make that
I
whole
understand.
ideological spectrum argument and how they're it's the how the KKK was largely Democrats and uh, it's gone through this specific history, but I think like the underlying thing there is just you can and what I want to emphasize is you can see the tribalism, you can see the hard wall, right, of the basket of deplorables. These are the people in my basket who are out of my society, right?
Fair enough. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just pointing out to the absurdity of how he's starting to put together just his worldview, like conservatives and KKK. So like now that all fits together. I don't understand his worldview, right? Like there's so he's talking about say the KKK and then conservatives, and he's kind of packaging that together. And it's just we just have very different perspectives. I don't understand how he builds his worldview,
Yeah. And
and
one of the
it seems ludicrous to me. But
and
yes, go on.
like one of my goals with the total perspective vortex is to really recognize the humanity of everyone involved in these ideological debates. Like I'm trying to make an overarching framework here that so we can reach out to people, and even if they don't adopt our framework, you can it's has some universality that's useful. So we can talk about like everyone uh, is capable of falling into tribalism, and the left in many regards, like you'll see them rail against tribalism, right? Like the John Lennon "Just Imagine." But one thing I'm trying to point out with that is like you people still think tribalistically no matter what. It's a
Right.
fundamental part of humanity, and if you insist on creating this sort of morality for yourself, like the John Lennon morality of just imagine, no religion, no borders, no USA at all, no like the nose of all these different tribes. You're not just by making that declaration. You're not achieving that. You're just hiding your your tribalistic tendencies from yourself. You're deceiving yourself, and in that
Right.
you are not taking responsibility and paying attention to how you're painting your tribes, because it's just absurd, right?
Right. Well, I would argue that if that is your vision of the world, people who disagree with you, like, and I think he's kind of describing them right there, are part of this other tribe that wants to maybe maintain their tribe.
I,
So
I
you
don't.
start, it creates. I don't see how it doesn't just create another form
Okay.
of tribalism. Thoughts?
They put Islamists in their tribe readily, right? they put lots of people who disagree with them in their tribe. But
Right.
it's and so that's part of the problem, is that they're forming their tribes in a very toxic way, and which I will get back to this, but and they're unaware of that because of this cover of no tribes at all, right? Because they're not consciously constructing their tribes, so what they are constructing is very ugly and toxic, and it's going
Certainly.
completely under the flooring, right? Under their John Lennon
Veneer.
floor, under their John Lennon Just Imagine a flooring of no tribes, rainbows and sunshines, everyone in the peace bed. Well, underneath
And
that
then
peace bed, the pipes are breaking and the infrastructure is leaking, and toxic ooze is oozing out everywhere, and they're just unaware because they're locked in their peace bed deception.
get HGTV on the case. Was it HGTV? Yeah,
HGTV, yeah.
yeah. You want to continue?
Yeah,
Well,
so we should, like, okay, so we should rehabilitate any conservatives who are willing to try. They don't know how to rehabilitate themselves, so I don't know how they're going to rehabilitate conservatives. But it's like send them to the gulag is what's going on here. And I'm not trying to be any more provocative than Palmer here is, but yeah, let's bring up the next part of his little tweet storm.
here, I'll read it off here. Um, Conservatism means you don't believe in equality. It means you want it all for yourself, and you're willing to destroy the other groups of people to take it all for yourself. That's not a crime against the law, but it is a crime against humanity, and we must acknowledge as much. Okay. Sick? Is that what? Anyway, this guy's a writer. All right. Conservatives cannot be teachers, police officers, doctors, lawyers, coaches, or bosses. It's constitutionally unfair to others who are subjected to the conservatives' deranged judgment. Conservatives can do menial work, oh Jesus, until they're ready to join the human race. Oh, I need a minute. I think there's more to this thread,
Yeah.
but I need a minute on that. So, what are your thoughts there while I digest this?
That there is some projection going on back from this thread of, and again, it's like the underlying thing of the unexpected. They're not inspecting their own intentions well enough. It's so important to try and see things clearly and set up iterative loops so you're improving your life and improving things. But they're just declaring that I believe these things, and since I've made this declaration to the ideological fealty, then I am now embodying these things, right? So it's, but again, it's like what's going on under the surface that's so ugly. And if you look at like postmodernism, it's naked power politics at its core. At the end of the day, they're throwing away all humanity, right? It's like they're throwing away all, and they're reducing everything to the purest, ugliest form of power politics.
Right.
And that's at the core of their ideology, that sort of toxic pipeline, because it's that nihilistic cynicism that's all there is.
These people sound fun at parties.
Well, I don't think
they're observing individuals. Okay, what's the power play here? Why is this person talking to this one? They want power this way. Like I can't.
Well, I think actually they're terribly unfun at parties because everyone's
well, that's right, yeah.
everyone's worried about getting shot, and like in the sense
Right.
that like everyone's worried about getting canceled and saying the wrong thing. So
Right.
everyone's putting on a face and walking on eggshells. So it's this social anxious environment. Like I don't think it's probably fun at all because you have to be super careful. But at the same time, like again, there's the in group out group thing. So if you sort of like they're certainly probably saying things at their cocktail parties that they would never say publicly, and they would
Right.
castigate their enemies for saying, or the people outside of their tribe for saying. Like it's the rules for thee and not for me aspect of
Classic.
this. But
Classic.
again, so they have this morality, like it's very interesting. Like if you try and get them to define their moral core in that, like how it actually works, they can't, right? Because it's not there. So they make these like appeals to human rights, and that, but they don't really have a good conception of a right. It's beyond. It's like, oh, I think it's something people should have.
You're right. Yeah. It's a very, I make this argument, and feel free to rebut me, but it's a religion, but it's a very young religion with ill-defined boundaries and that are in constant flux. Like what is normal today is racist, transphobic, you name it, in the next few months. So it becomes incredibly dangerous to do anything. And they don't have a concept of redemption yet. There's no path to redemption. Uh, you know, so it's as soon as you're otherized, you're done, you're cooked. You can't come back. So yeah, it's a very, very interesting, very deranged proto religion. Um,
Well, and again, it's an uninspected religion, so there's no path
right.
to iterating. So it's victim ideology completely removes it from scrutiny. So, and if you can't see your flaws, or you completely hide the flaws, then you're never going to improve them, right?
Right.
As long as you
Right.
you throw another blanket on the piece bed and spray some more perfume, you won't smell the sewage.
All right. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, and then, but the attack on power, right? Then it's like the othering of this tribe. It's like we have to put them out of any sort of uh, any positions of power or influence because they're tyrannical, or their judgment is deranged. When actually, it's a lot of the time their judgment is fair. It's like they want to judge everyone equally under the law. And that's what they're really attacking here. So the thing that's going unnamed is that it's an attack on two things. It's like meritocracy, and the law. Because it's and both of those are related to like impartial rule-based systems. And that's what and that are necessary to structure a larger society, because like I've talked before, how compassion based systems don't work on scale because you get into these the well, a couple of different reasons, but one of the big ones is that the incentive to deceive and the incentive for corruption goes up because you can't track everyone, right? So the rewards for cheating at the game go higher and higher. And if there's no real rules, like, well, there's what game are you even playing on the societal level? So it's so they're trying to apply like sort of what works for a family, a small tight knit group that have to stay together, the rules that they navigate on. They're trying to project that out onto the larger society, and then you get a mob. You get communism. So all these things is like you're going to get more cronyism from what they're suggesting. Like it's like, so judges aren't going to judge on any sort of rule of law. They're going to judge based on who the defendant is and who the plaintiff is, right? And
Right.
so they are they are exacerbating every ill of society that they pretend to rail against. And you see these in democratic cities. Like, where are the most homeless people? Where are the ills of society? Where's the most police brutality? Like, you want to where are most black people shot?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And who runs those places?
I see the stat come up quite frequently, but if you remove like the top 10 Democratic cities from the crime stats, it makes the U.S. one of the safest places for violent crime in the world. Like it jacks it right up.
It's safest
Once you
for
remove
people
those.
from violent crime, you mean?
Say again.
Safest for people from violent crime, like
I
the
don't know what I
lowest
said.
levels of
Yes.
violent crime. You said it's safe for violent crime, which could
Oh,
be
it's safe for violent. Yes, yes. So yes, yeah. Thank you. I'm sure people understood, but thank you for correcting that. Yes,
yeah.
but yes, exactly. So um, so I mean I haven't looked into those statistics personally, but if they're true, um, wow. So it just to your point.
Yeah, and
So
and it's because, like, again, on large systems, they have to be more impartial. They have to be more rule based. That's actually it's the only way to go for a large governing system, because you can't run everything on exceptions, because then it all falls apart.
right.
So this idea, they desire a destructive system. They want everything centralized at a large side, like all the national decisions to be made by one great leader, or even worse, the globalist system, where there's like one central authority that's going to be making all the decisions, and then they want that system to be compassionate. Well, the
Right.
system that won't have the inputs to be compassionate, it is
Right.
fundamentally an impossible ask, and that's what's sort of at the center of um, of the left going through too far. The toxic compassion is having this, proposing a set of symptoms, a set of requirements for society that are fundamentally impossible to achieve. They're outside the realm of the potential, and then you are and then condemning our existing system for not achieving that impossible standard, right?
Right.
And that's and what you end up doing is you end up condemning everything. It makes you feel powerful and good and moral, because at a cost, you can imagine something, right? And this is like imagine, like John Lennon's Imagine. You can imagine this utopian world, and because you can imagine it and you can say I want this, you can condemn the real world, and that's that condemnation of God, right? Like that's sort of what is and what could be,
I
because you're saying that these things are uh, are beneath your vision, like this your imagined vision.
So you're saying I can't. Uh,
That's how you become resentful
you're
of
gonna have to
everything.
unpack. You're gonna have to unpack. I think a little bit if you're gonna say
Yeah, I know.
if you're gonna say
I
God.
jumped jumped around a few levels there, but what I'm trying to get at is that you you have to criticize the world, right? You have to have some criticism, but it has to be within the realm of potential, but what is possible, and it takes a little
Right.
wisdom to understand that. So
Right.
so there is some value in judging the world and judging your society and how it can be better,
Of course.
right? But your expectations of where things are going have to be in the realm of possibility, and you have to take into account that it's going to require sacrifice to get there. You can't have everything. You can't have the John Lennon peace bed imagine, right?
There's trade-offs.
There's trade-offs.
Right.
And and what when you see that, when you have this image of how the world could be, no matter if it's in the realm of possibility or if it's not, it's going to generate a little bit of resentment in you, a little bit of anger in you, right?
Right.
And that is the positive side of compassion. That's why we need the left, because we need someone to get a little bit of angry about how things are and how they can be better, to push us to make the world better, right?
And
That's
then talk to a conservative person on how to implement that.
Yeah, and talk to a conservative person about
talk to
exactly, and talk
your
to a conservative.
geeky bean counters and your yeah.
Yeah, so you come up with a creative new idea, and then you need somewhat like someone who's wisdom based, who's pragmatic, to sort of say, okay, well, this is how we can get you there. This is how this might be possible, and this is but this is the trade offs that it's going to cost. So but to get it back, is it generates a little anger, it generates a little resentment, right? Necessarily, if you're
Right.
compassion driven like that. But if you're asking for something that is outside the possibility, then you're not just, and you're like the whole, you go for the whole imagine, right? Then you will be not just resentful of what is, but of everything that could be as well, because it's not as good as the thing that you imagine. So you get what I'm saying
Oh, of
there?
course, of
Yeah.
course. It's like
So
you're
you that's
comparing the world to paradise,
yeah.
and a paradise that's really nonsensical, and
Yeah.
it's not a fully formed
So this is the
idea that connects with itself, and
mm,
that's my criticism of socialism. When you're trying to debate socialists, is that the it's just a series of aphorisms that are disconnected, that you can't connect together.
but it's
So
an
it's hard to attack that ideology, because it just doesn't
it's
make sense as a
so
whole.
here's it is from their
So
perspective, and this is the trap though, right? Is that so you're this utopian possibility, you're going to hold not just what is in contempt and be angry about it, but all the worlds that can be like a potential in contempt. And that's when you're holding the whole state, that's all of being at that point. And when you're holding all of being, when you're holding all of God in contempt, that's that path of full evil. Like everything that's going to be proposed to you is not good enough, and that's what you're going to get, right? When then they try to talk someone who's more from the reason camp. It's like, because the person from the reason camp is going to try and point to, well, this is why this is not possible. This is why this is pragmatic. This is what we can do. You're going to hold all of that in contempt. You're going to say you're just making excuses for the status quo. You're part of the problem. You're not compassionate enough. That's not good enough, right? And you're going to point, and you might be contradictory reasons, but this person will be left out, or this bad thing will happen, and this need is not being served, and you can just stay in that state of perpetual anger and resentment, and it makes you feel good and righteous because you are, like I said, you're putting yourself above God. You're the one with the one true beautiful vision, and it's a rush. So
all right,
let's
well,
move on
let's
to
I'm
let's.
assuming, just based on the layout, there's a
There is
third
the
slide
third
there.
slide there, yeah, and we
All
are
right,
getting a little long here, but
yeah, that's it. So I'll go ahead and read it, and see what that brings up. So, uh, people who promote the racist propaganda, hate speech on One American News Network are dangerous thugs. They have no place in respectable society. Mike Gundy cannot remain the I guess Oklahoma state
yeah,
coach. Too influential of a position in society. Fire him unless he agrees to get extensive psychological help. Oof. It's time we acknowledge that conservatism isn't some political view. It means you're the very bottom rung of society, dangerous and deranged. Some conservatives are trying to become better people. Great. But people who flaunt their conservatism are psychotic.
yeah. So
I mean,
people
it's
who
it's a
flaunt
lot of
their
the same
conservative,
stuff.
and this is actually like this is it's things are pretty eventful now. So you'll forgive me for forgetting the instigating incident of this Twitter tweet storm, but it's this guy Mike Gundy put up a picture of on Instagram with him wearing an OANN T-shirt. So where
Okay.
the crime that precipitated this whole Twitter storm is a football coach wearing a T-shirt, a T-shirt with a conservative, what is it, broadcaster or news network's
Right.
name on
Yeah.
it, like a news what do you call it, the OAN, or you said it,
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
America is, yeah, it's One America News
One
Network,
America. Yeah, I think
One
so.
America News Network branded T-shirt, and now we have to send him to the gulag. He's only capable of doing menial labor.
Wow. So, actually, the is you have a screenshot of his
Yeah,
website, right?
yeah. I was
I
gonna
think
segue
it's a
the
good
next.
time
What
to.
is? But yeah. So this is, and this is just for a point of interest, who this Palmer report guy is. I found it quite entertaining. So this is his website here, and you'll see that I
There's
talk a little bit
a
of the left, so maybe you can accuse me of being a little obsessive too, but
there's a theme here. I'm sensing a theme.
I'm sensing
Maybe.
something connecting to the dot. Like I feel like I could go on the Donald, and and maybe I will. Let's see this just for fun. Okay. And I feel like I'm seeing less Trumps, a little less focus on Trump than I am in here. And we got, and just so you're clear, this is not just one page. This is paginated. We got 659 quality pages of all Trump all the time.
Is there a word for that? Some sort of syndrome, where you're deranged in your focus of an individual, in this case Trump. Was there
some sort of syndrome that's a syndrome, derangement towards the 45th president of the United States?
Something like, we should find a word for that. Like
we'll 45 derangement syndrome, maybe. 4-5 DS.
Let's stick with that for now until someone comes up with something better.
Yeah, something with a little bit more punch.
Yeah, a little more punch, a little more memeable. That's an insight into his obsession. This is talk about ideas.
There is
really Trump ?
Yeah.
Fascinating. You were gonna say?
Oh, and I mean, like, I can relate that. I'm sort of, you're probably gonna be able to, throw shade back on me and say, like, you talk a lot about the left and communism, and that's true. Try to not make it so much about a specific individual, and talk a little bit more about ideas. But it is fascinating that they have this absolute obsession, because it's really put their worldview out of whack. But yeah, so yeah, if you're hate watching me, you can go check out that site. I think you'll probably feel a little bit more comfortable.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, this was an interesting conversation. I still have not fully digested this series of tweets, but okay. I don't know what to do with his worldview.
Be aware of it, right?
Be aware of it. Well, I guess one last question, and before we wrap up, how seriously should we take people like this?
I think we should take them very seriously. But what we really need to do is, and this is where the conservatives keep falling down, and just people, is that they have this disconnect, because they're driven by a religious morality, but that religious morality has been, because of the rules that they agreed to for legitimate rules, the separation of church and state. It's been ruled out of the secular square, and without, and we need to way to actually make humanist arguments, secular arguments for the previous, like, the religious underpinnings of Western civilization. Right. So we have to, one of the reasons, and that a lot of, I think that the conservative politicians that are being so tepid, is that there's currently no counter narrative for the leftists to what the leftists are putting forward.
Right.
Like a coherent one that has moral strength. Right. So, like, the moral strength that keeps the police defending the statues is gone. Right. The moral strength that stops our leaders or police officers from kneeling to the mob is gone.
And so I guess this is probably a good place to end, and we should probably explore
Well, that's
I'll obviously explore this kind of topic a little bit further, where we
well,
kind
I
of
mean,
flesh out what it is that that vision is, right?
yeah, that's what I'm trying to do with the total perspective vortex. Let's make that argument. Let's find that moral strength.